How's it going, everybody? It's the CDH Warrior coming at you with another episode of CDH. We survived this? Now what? So, let's roll the title. This week, as promised, we're doing our whiteboard discussion. Continuing, I believe this is part 3. Give me 1 second. I stand corrected. It is part 4 of our relationships series. Not quite to the end, but not far from it, though. Last week was part 3, which is was our midway point for this series. Last week we discussed questions, concerns. Which was basically when to tell your spouse that you have CDH. When did you tell your spouse you had CDH? When do you tell a spouse that you have a major rare disorder? This week, was our whiteboard discussion. Basically, the question is this. There are 2 questions, and I don't know if you can see the whiteboard from here, but there's quite simply 2 questions. One, well, apparently you all can't see. I've got it in black ink and you can't see it. Let's try this vibrant red ink pen. Literally, you cannot see it at all. We're going to find a bit better option here. 1 second. Okay, I think I solved this. Part of it was how far away the camera was. But, question 1. Ignore the noises from downstairs. It's my sister and her boyfriend. They're up to some fun gaming. I got finished earlier today, so. Anyway, discussion at hand. 2 questions. Two simple questions, this answers. If I can. I think this looks really weird, but if you can bear with my writing, it is backwards, so. Yeah, my camera is completely backwards. Of course, it would help if I could write. I have a paper towel. I did. Somewhere. There it is. It actually works to some extent. looking at this and it looks like I've written it backwards. Trust me, it will all make sense in a minute. Okay. Question 1. When do you tell a spouse about having CDH or another rare disorder? So that's our first question. We have a second question, but I've run out of whiteboard. I really wish I had a larger one, but I make do with what I have. And I know there are some people that, well, is there really a good or bad time? It's not so much good or bad that you're worried about. Part of it is how much trust you have in a relationship. So that's your first question. Are you completely upfront with somebody, or are you still trying to feel out the relationship? Or there's a lot of questions in this, and we'll get to further into this discussion later. There's another discussion, and next week's will be for when you're a lot further in a relationship. But there are several questions you need to answer. Okay, question 1. This is subgroup 1. Question 1. For you to ask yourself. How, excuse my writing, how severe was it? How severe was your CDH? I still think it's reversing what I'm writing, but we'll make do with it for this week. Were you just a small hole in your diaphragm, or was it basically half of it? I was left side CDH and missing, okay, bear with me, my illustrations and drawing are terrible, but basically, if I understand correctly, I had just a sliver here, and I had a good portion here. So that's one question. That's basically where we were going through the images at the beginning of this of, was it type A, type B, type C, type D? And it was basically various amounts of diaphragm missing. So somebody that had a type A repair, it's probably not going to be that severe. Does that mean you should forego telling your partner that you had this? That's a little bit into judgment. That's the reason why I started out with this question. Question 2. How far into the relationship are you? if I can spell. Okay? Are we a few weeks in, a few months in, or are we looking at a year plus? If you're pretty much at a year plus, you pretty much should already know this. But there are some people that like their privacy. That's not necessarily a knock on anyone, but that's question 2. So now that you've got that part, question 3. And next week's whiteboard discussion will be more into the relationships, but a lot further in. That's why I brought up question 2. How far into the relationship are you? Because you don't want to frighten someone. Trust me, I've had that happen. Question 3. Again, if I can spell and write, that's not the way I want to phrase this. The question that I was going to ask is simply this. And this is a question for you. Is this a long-term relationship? As the whiteboard is falling on me. Relationship. Again, if I can spell. It's hard to try and write on a whiteboard sideways, especially when it's lower than you. Is this a long-term relationship? What do I mean by that question? Are you looking at this as a person you want to spend forever with? Or is this somebody that, and I don't want to sound harsh with this question, but is this somebody you're just getting to know and more or less looking for the experience of dating, but not being long-term or marriage material? I sound horrible the way I say that, but that's seriously a question you need to ask. I guess since this is a question, it needs a question mark, but I'm not in the grammar police. Please do not go after me. So that's question 3. And over the next few weeks, we'll pick a question and discuss it. I know in a few weeks we'll get into some heavier topics with regards to, where did my marker? There it is. Thought I lost my marker for a second. We'll get more into the long term and dealing with the future questions, but that's not what I wanted this video to focus on. Future questions are really going to be more, you're married and, okay, do you want to have kids? How is that going to affect you? How is your CDH going to affect A, having children, but B, keeping up with said children as you get older. But again, that's a topic for another discussion. And each one of these questions I'm asking, I'm going to ultimately break them down into smaller questions. I'm going to have more drawn out videos about these questions. Obviously, the first couple of questions, how long term is the relationship? How far into the relationship are you? Those are not necessarily going to be videos to themselves. That's why I wanted to knock those questions out here. Other questions that you need to ask yourself, not so much that you need to ask a partner, and I want to stress this. The questions that I'm raising aren't questions that you need to ask a partner. You can discuss them with your partner, but they're not questions for your partner. They're questions for you. They're questions for where you are. We're on, I think, question 4. I'm trying to discern if I skipped a question, but we'll come back. So question 4 is, more of an indirect question than a direct question, and more of a spouse-related question. And it is, how are you going to deal with some of the treatment? So it's when I'm not stating, oh, we're not repaired. No, that's not what I'm stating. Some of us have long-term issues. So I'm going to write question 4, basically, long-term again, if I could spell. Long-term health issues related to CDH. So that looks kind of weird. So what am I talking about with this question? Long-term health issues with CDH. Well, let's talk about reherniation. And we kind of discussed what is reherniation in another video. So I'm not going to necessarily reiterate this question. But that will be another video that will go through what are the long-term health issues, what are the long-term problems that you can have. Reherniation, kind of a gross subject, but we'll add this. Again, if I can spell. Bowel. Blockages / obstructions. I just kind of ran out of room there. yes, that is a serious question. That is a serious issue we can live with. Is it common? Moderately, but it's not uncommon. It's not one of those super rare that you don't have to worry about. It also is a loaded question with the bowel obstruction and bowel blockages, is how much was manipulated during repair surgery. Did they have to pull everything down or not? And that would probably be a question your parent would know, as opposed to you having to answer that question yourself. But this is more when you get into kind of the later months to a year into a relationship. I'm thinking 6 months to a year. You don't want to spring something like that right off the bat. But you also want to make sure it's somewhere in the back of your head that, hey, this exists, this can occur. So that's video number 4. And number 5 is more of a specific topic. And it's number 5. And this is going to be a taboo topic, but so be it, is reproduction, and there's a much bigger question involved in this. And that is, there are a lot of issues that we can have. I put reproduction, but I also add intimacy. Because kind of one and the other are tied. They're tied together, but they're really not the same question. I'll be honest. I have numbness where all my scar tissue is. It's either completely numb and I feel very little, if anything, or I can feel every little minute movement over it. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. Trust me, I've been living with this for 28 years, and I still don't understand it. But that kind of gives you a general layout of questions you need to have, questions you need to raise. Over the next literally 5 weeks, we're going to go through and break each one of these questions down and how you deal with them. So I've pretty much run out of time here. So for the CDH Warrior, I'm Drew Monday, and this has been CDH. We survived this. Now what? I will see you next time. Have a great day.